guys, it's Heather from Psychology of Superheroes. Today, we're going to talk about Midnighter. We're going to look at several different storylines because there's a lot to talk about. With this episode, no one recommended it. I read that Midnighter is basically a gay Batman, so I just had to jump on that and see what was going on with it. But also, with this, I didn't necessarily want to focus on just one thing. Kind of like how I did with the Harley Quinn episode. Didn't necessarily want to diagnose her. I don't really want to diagnose Midnighter, but I wanted to give an overall profile of who Midnighter is. Because before reading that he's a gay, darker, if you can imagine, Batman, before reading that, I had never heard of him. And I didn't know anything about him before reading these comics. So I just wanted to get an idea of him as a whole. His first appearance was in Stormwatch, came out in 1998 in issue 4. Stormwatch, I had to do my research. Stormwatch is an international peacekeeping super team. Stormwatch Black was a hidden super team in case something would happen to Stormwatch. The Midnighter was a part of Stormwatch Black. His former identity was erased. Technically, he doesn't even exist, but he was experimented on and was given these superpowers. His identity was erased. He doesn't remember who he is. So from Stormwatch Black, 5 out of the 7 original members died, leaving Midnighter and Apollo. And so they're working together. They're partnering up. Midnighter seems, just in this first issue, much more savage as compared to his partner, Apollo. Midnighter says, "My colleague doesn't like your guns. That means he doesn't like you. But he's polite, a mild-mannered man. That's as angry as he gets. I, on the other hand, hate you. Do you understand? I hate you. I want to torture you. I want to leave doctors puzzling for years over how I've done things I want to do to you. My mild-mannered colleague will not interfere. Your life as a bipedal vertebrae is over." Whoa, like right away. He reminds me a lot of Batman, first of all. A lot darker than Batman. And Apollo is kind of like, he's also a gay Superman is what's going on with him. But right at first, this partnership between Midnighter and Apollo actually kind of reminds me of the partnership prior to the Watchmen, but the partnership between Rorschach and Night Owl. One is a lot more darker, a lot more brutal, and the other one doesn't necessarily want to take those type of tactics. So the Midnighter shows up in a series called The Authority. That's in 1999, and that was 29 issues. I did not read that, but I did read a standalone called The Authority Kev. Now in this story, there's members of Stormwatch, and they have become members of the Authority, along with the Midnighter and Apollo from Stormwatch Black. So they've reformed a new group, and they've called it the Authority, and it's another international organization. This guy Kev is hired to kill them, and he kills all of them, including Midnighter. They're done. But then aliens attack after he kills the only one who could have stopped them. But it's fine because they're all hanging out in, like, their headquarters is a space station, and the space station happens to be sentient. And so it reverses time so that Kev can undo killing them and warn them about the invasion. So things happen and then it's undone, and then the Authority beats these alien invaders. Midnighter, though, he's upset that Kev tried to kill him in the first place, and he's still ready to kill him. He's ready to take him out. But Apollo talks him down. We don't have to kill this guy. Time has been reversed. We're fine. But then Kev calls them a couple of poofs, a slur, a derogatory term for gay men. At that point, they beat him up and they send him to the hospital. So Apollo at first was like, let's just let him go. And then he insults them and he's like, no, let's take care of this guy. They don't kill him, but they send him to the hospital. Then we have Midnighter has his own title. It's Midnighter, and that came out in 2007, and that was 20 issues. And in the first issue, he has this monologue. I am not a lover. I am not a father. I am not a friend. I am what I was bred to be. And therein lies the problem. See, he's tasked with this idea of his memory has been erased, and he was given these powers, and he was created to be a killing machine. And that keeps him from having a normal life, normal relationship. So he has to deal with that. Midnighter's kind of cool. He uses portals to jump from place to place. He says door, and a door appears, and then he just hops into it and it takes him somewhere else. He's kind of able to, he sees the future in that he sees all the possible outcomes, like within the next 15 seconds. He has like a computer brain. He's bred to be a killer, but he draws the line at children. And he's hired to go back in time to kill Hitler. But at first it's like, well, let's just send you back in time to baby Hitler. And he's like, no, I'm not going to kill a child, even if that child were to grow up to be Hitler. So he's bred to be a killer. He has some pretty gray morals, and by by gray, I'm talking like darker gray. You know, if there's 50 shades of gray, then it's like towards the darker end of that spectrum. So he goes back in time to kill Hitler, but he insists that it be once Hitler is grown up. Like, he has gray morals, but he draws the line at killing children. So here's his powers. He has a computer for a brain. He can see all the possible outcomes within the next few moments. So like he's able to dodge or parry people's attacks because he's already seen them. In his words, he's already lived it. And he can heal some physical injuries. Once he goes back in time, he saves some Nazi German kids from Russian soldiers. You know, even if these kids were raised or recruited to the Nazi movement, you know, they're still children. He's still going to protect them. And he punches a Nazi through his face. Through his face. That's what I said. And Midnighter says, I can only walk past so many Nazis. So he's cool. I like him. He continues this important superhero trend that has been going on since the beginning of superheroes in comic books. This trend of punching Nazis. Anyways, this one character, Bonnie, asks Midnighter, so stuff goes bad for you. Stuff goes bad on you. Like, really friggin' terrible. What do you usually do? And Midnighter responds, I behave like a complete bastard and kill the son of a bitch that needs it. Which I feel like that quote in and of itself just really captures Midnighter. He is this flawed person. He's a screw up, unfortunately. Like, that's kind of the way that's how he would describe himself. Whenever he's in like a good situation, he can't get past himself to just let him enjoy this good situation. We'll talk about that more in a second. But he admits to that, and he's super violent. He's way darker than Batman. And Midnighter is a DC character, so he was created to be like Batman, but way darker. And so he has no problem killing someone who he thinks deserves it, whereas Batman has that no killing rule. But he doesn't kill just for the sake of killing. He does have a sense of justice. So we got all this time traveling, right? He tells this woman from the 96th century. So what is that? Like the 9500? Anyways, he tells this woman from the 96th century that he's gay. But she has no idea what that means. Apparently, in the future, everyone is pansexual. Which, here's my questions to the writers who are writing there. Are you saying that the human race, everyone chooses to be pansexual? Because that's not cool. Sexual orientation is not a choice. It's how you are as a person. So if you're not saying that it's a choice, are you saying that the human race evolved so that now everyone is pansexual? Or maybe sexual orientations are all the same, but they just don't use terms, so people aren't separated by whatever orientation that they are. So that was kind of like, I think I read like the first 5 issues of this run. I think at some point in the rest of the issues, he and Apollo are married, and Midnighter must get kidnapped because of the next series, which I did read, and that's called Grifter and Midnighter. And that was 6 issues. But it starts off with Midnighter hooked up, kind of like as if he were in the Matrix. He's rescued by the Authority, but he's pretty pissed off that the Authority had to rescue him in the first place. Midnighter says, they took me because I was the weakest one of us, and my big-hearted lover comes to rescue me. I'm not the convenient hostage here. I'm not the little wife, and you know that better than anyone. So he's angry, and people aren't calling him the convenient hostage. They're not calling him the little wife. They're not saying that he's the weakest member of the Authority, but he's putting all of that on himself. So he's feeling really insecure. This character Z tells Midnighter that he was actually abducted to test his powers. So they wanted to see, whoever kidnapped him wanted to see what all was he capable of. And at some point in this whole series, Midnighter basically on his own fights some alien monster things. And on the topic of why he didn't alert the Authority to get some help, Midnighter says, I don't want help. I want to do this one on my own. So he just came from this experience where he's feeling a little insecure about himself as a member of the Authority. Look, if you think of the Authority as the Justice League, and you think of all those people on the Justice League, you got Superman, who's basically a god, Wonder Woman, who's basically a god, you got the fastest man alive, you have the king of the ocean, you have this whichever Green Lantern's there at the time, all of these super powered, incredibly strong beings. And then you have Batman, who is rich and he's smart. So if you think of Midnighter as kind of like a commentary on Batman, this series kind of talks about what could Batman possibly ever feel inferior to the other members of the Justice League. Because Midnighter is feeling a little inferior to the other members of the Authority. He's feeling very self-conscious, very insecure. So he just came from the situation where he was kidnapped and he had to be rescued, and he's embarrassed is what's going on. So now he's going out to try to prove something to himself, that he's not the weakest member. And eventually him and this other guy, Grifter, they kill the alien monsters. They get the job done. And Grifter says to him, all those super gods, Apollo, Jenny Quartz, Engineer, Zealot, Magistic, Spartan, but it was some grouch in a leather jacket that terrified them. So just get the hell over yourself, tough guy. So the Grifter kind of like, the members of the Authority are trying to like make Midnighter feel better about himself, but Grifter puts it to him straight, which I think is a better way to communicate with Midnighter because he's a more blunt person. He's like, look, they kidnapped you and tested your powers because there was something about you that terrified them. They didn't kidnap Apollo. They didn't kidnap Jenny Quartz. It was after you. So he says, just get the hell over yourself, tough guy. And I think that's really what Midnighter needed at that point. And then there was the New 52 Stormwatch run. Midnighter was in that. That's about 30 issues. I didn't read that one. I did read Midnighter Armageddon, the standalone. That was in from 2007. He's introduced as the deadliest man alive. And I think it doesn't necessarily comment on his ability to kill, but I do think it comments on Midnighter's likelihood of killing. Like Apollo could probably take out more people than Midnighter, but Apollo doesn't want to. Midnighter wants to. Midnighter says at one point, do I look like some kind of detective? Yes, Midnighter, you literally look like the gay Batman. Like that's how you were made. But anyways, he's taken to the future to find out how to circumvent the end of the world. And at the end of the world, all the members of the Authority are weakened. Nothing really, to me, happens in this one. It's more just like a conversation, like a philosophical, well, what about the end of the world kind of thing. And he gets pulled back to the present. And his takeaway from seeing the end of the world and seeing all of the members of the Authority weakened, his takeaway from that is, I just can't help thinking, whether it's this or something else, all it takes is for us to fail once. And that's really a commentary on any superhero, because if you think about it, like a Superman can't have a 99% success rate, really, because if he lets Lex Luthor or Zod win just one time, it's over with. And so that's Midnighter's takeaway from that. And then there's Midnighter's, he has another standalone series, or his own title, Midnighter. That's from 2015, and that's about 12 issues. So it begins with, he has an online dating profile, which I think is super. Apparently he broke up with Apollo. But he says in his online dating profile, chronically new in town, computer and brain, superhumanly flexible, generally use flexibility for justice, looking for other uses, have headbutted an alien. Whatever you're thinking, the answer is likely yes, but with punching. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that Midnighter's he's kind of kinky in the bedroom. But like I said, he broke up with Apollo and he's trying to get back onto the dating scene in this series. We get a flashback to Midnighter and Apollo breaking up, and Midnighter had deceived Apollo about his identity, about his backstory, and then he was the one who initiated the breakup because he thought that Apollo deserved better. So Midnighter has this dating profile. He goes out with this guy, Jason, and they're on their first date, and he says, I'm a fighter. I fight for normal people, but I'll never be one. I'm not a hero. And some people can't handle that. And Jason seems pretty cool with him, but then Midnighter, oh my god, he comes on super heavy to this guy. Like, you guys know the joke about what does a lesbian bring to the second date? A U-Haul. Because they're ready to move in. This is Midnighter. And does he even wait till the second date to be like, I don't know, we're married now or something? But he tells his friend Tony that he came on too hard to Jason, and now Jason is playing the friend card. Later, he's on another date with this other guy, and he's pretty much using the same tactics. Also, and this was super awkward, this was like a train wreck to read. When he's on dates, he keeps mentioning Andrew or Apollo. Later, when he's with Matt, who is his current, like he has his boyfriend. When he's with Matt, he's still thinking about his breakup with Apollo. Like, he's not over Apollo at all, even though he's with this other guy, and maybe has feelings for him, maybe even loves him, whatever. But he broke up with Apollo, and it's still there. The feelings are still there. So there's this person, the gardener, and she's the person who created Midnighter and erased his origin, erased his identity. She calls him for help and tells him that there's a file with all of this info about him, and it's been stolen. villain. So Midnighter, throughout this series, he's going to go find out his origin story. He wants to know his background. He's traveling around to different places. At one point, he's in Moscow, and these guys are fairly intolerant, and Midnighter just busts them up. He just lets loose on them. This man has no time for homophobia. There's this woman who speaks words, and it causes extreme pain. So what Midnighter does, he rips his ears off. If your words are gonna cause me pain, guess what? Here go my ears. So he rips his ears off, and he stops this woman from killing the board of this unethical company. Contact me. You can find some more articles, podcasts, and videos on psychologyofsuperheroes.tumblr.com. Can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Soundcloud. Also contact me on Twitter at PsychSuperheroes. Do send me those messages, especially if you when you listen to these or if you've read these characters that I've talked about. Even if you just disagree with me, especially if you disagree with me or if you have a correction to make, let me know. Please also check out my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/psychologyofsuperheroes. I'll see you guys next time.